I hope you are well. Today's video is part 2 of the Journal It 2 Ways. I did mention that I'm going to do a few videos using my Hobonichi, which is technically my off-camera journal, but I've gotten so behind that in order for me to catch up or just to get some time in here, I have to make it part of my work, which kind of defeats the purpose of an off-camera journal, but I would much rather get my journaling done in here and have it part of my job and stuff like that than just let it go by the wayside. And I've got like a plethora of pages to catch up on, so this won't be a regular thing, but when I want to either show you something or I want to sort of do a few pages in here so that I don't let the paper go to waste and all that sort of thing, I'm going to be doing a couple of like videos here and there of just catching up in my Hobo. And that will also mean in the Journal Keeper series this will feature as well, because I consider it a journal, and if I'm working on it, which I normally try to do at night time, then I will have footage of that in parts of the Journal Keeper series. So that will be coming up very soon. It is super cold, my hands are aching. I should put my fingerless gloves on, but I know that if I use any painter or watercolor, which I am going to do, I will just smudge it with my glove. So you guys saw, where is my journal? Where's my yellow journal? Let me go grab it. I think it's beside my bed, so I'm gonna go grab it. Found it on my bed head with my pen roll, so I needed that too, so I'm glad that I got up. You guys saw recently, sorry, I've got odds and ends in here that I need to either pop into this journal, a beautiful little painting from Patricia, and a little happy mail. The keep cup thing is for the Hobo. Few of these bits and pieces. This is going into my journal, but I actually have this photo to use today because ties in. That is actually the first time we took the kids to the zoo in Sydney. This is on that day, so this is what they were wearing. I remember it vividly. I have a picture of Boo sitting with John because they were still adjusting to having him around at that time. You guys know that John isn't their biological father, and so this was one we were trialing if we would work as a family unit. We would go to stay with him for little blocks of time to see how we worked as a family. Before I transitioned, we decided that we would work as a family unit, and the kids were happy and I was happy and John was happy. It was a big step for us because obviously I had 2 small humans. I still have 2 small humans, and we didn't know if it was going to work. We did long distance for almost a year before we decided to take the plunge and move in together and us go from rural New South Wales to Sydney. So this was one of the trips that we did. We actually did the aquarium as well, but I remember this day perfectly. They're wearing little outfits that my mother-in-law, or now mother-in-law Maria, had sewed for them, and it was I was so stressed. I remember being so stressed because I came to the marriage, or to the partnership, separated, well, and now divorced. I had tattoo, I had a nose piercing, and I had 2 small children, and they are very religious, and so that was one of the things that we didn't know how it would go. But when I first met Maria, and John had obviously told Maria about us, the first thing she did when she met me was she hugged me, and then she showed me that she'd sewn my little teacup human some winter pajamas, and I broke down and cried. And they love my kids, our kids, as if they were their own. There's no difference in any of the grandchildren, especially my 2. So she did make little clothes for them, and she still does to this day. So I wanted to put that in there sort of like as a little throwback reminder. And obviously the other picture that you just saw, wherever I put it, I put things in random spots. This is that picture recreated on the day, so that's to go into my journal, or I'll end up putting in the Hobo on the actual day. I've got it written down somewhere. So, but I thought that would be a nice little throwback, especially since I'm journaling about the zoo. And this is the pages here. Again, I still haven't finished my journaling bit. I get so distracted lately. But, oh God, my glue skills, man. Do not judge me on my glue skills. But they are the pictures that I use, and I think the only I will probably go and snap a single shot of one of the cards Maybe, we'll see. I don't know if it's necessary, because I do have other pictures about the day as well. So that's the harbour, and this is a picture John took of Elijah taking some photographs. A gift that we gave the kids a couple of years ago was cameras, so they could start documenting their stuff. And so they both took their cameras. Tiger Trek is something that's new, and they have Sumatran tigers, so that was something I took a picture of. I guess there's no real animals in this. I'm actually going to be trying to sketch the baby hippo as a little watercolor in here, but I'm just trying to work out. I've only got one page, so I've got to be very creative with how I put these together. So I try and fit as much as possible into these, and try and just cut and chop and frame things in certain ways, because I've got quite a few pictures. We'll see how I go. So yeah, but that's enough babbling from me. But now you'll see how I work the Hobonichi feel into my work. It'll be interesting because I even don't know what I want to do yet. I think maybe my harbour picture is too big, but I feel like I printed out a little picture of the harbour and put it somewhere, so I may go for a search to see, unless I put it in my journal. Now I'm just babbling to myself, but I feel like I did, and now I don't remember if I actually put it in here or not. But we'll see. I may have to go off camera. Just, oh, maybe they're here. Oh, yay! That is just a cut off. So that's the Sydney Harbour. And that's from Japan. And that is me and Elijah when Elijah was sick. So no, none of these. But I do have the Opera House. So if worst comes to worst, I can just pop the Opera House in instead of that big picture and end up putting that picture in my journal somewhere. Won't go to waste, that is for sure. So I'm going to get started right now. So I decided not to go so much for realism. I just grabbed a picture, a photograph, because I couldn't get the picture of the pygmy hippo. I didn't actually take one. I was so enamored with the little guy when he ran up to get some food that I didn't take one. So I've just looked up online, saw a couple of photographs that are way better than I could ever do, and just sort of did my own little sketch, very stylized, to just sort of fit in with a bit more whimsy, which is definitely my kind of thing. And I've decided to just use a scrap piece of watercolor paper because I'm going to back it onto a tip in anyway, trying to use what I have, and I didn't want to get a new piece of watercolor paper out when I have scraps in my collage thing. That will start becoming a theme in one of the stuff that I make. It'll probably be reusing something. And this was for tests for something. I can't even remember what it was, but I still hoard paper like crazy. So it means that I have a whole heap of scraps to use up, especially when we start the use it or lose it challenge, which will start up next week. And there's been a great response to that. So I'm really happy with that. So I'm just using my Color Eno pencil in pink. And I've got my watercolors floating around here somewhere. I've got my normal set in here, which I will grab out, and then I have a couple of tins of watercolors just floating around. I've got these which aren't in tins at the moment, which need to be, so I'll get those into a tin soon. But yeah, I'm gonna paint this baby and start working on my actual page. I just wanted to get the sketch done, paint it, and then start working on all the bits and pieces. I decided that I'd create a tip in because when I was sitting here sort of fixing up and working out how I wanted everything, because I've printed these a bit too big, they don't fit on the page. There's just no room for much else. So I thought if I make a tip in, which I don't normally do, I do a couple of little ones here and there. And if I've got a postcard, sometimes little things, but generally I try and not do tip-ins in my hobo because I know I should have got the Avec if I was thinking about tip-ins, because I know that these bulk up very quickly, but I just didn't want to waste the photograph, so I thought, oh, I'll just turn it into a tip-in and then add some stuff and then add my little sketch onto the back of this card. And because the Project Life cards don't handle water all that well, I thought if I just use a little scrap piece of watercolor paper, I can back that on to the tip in. And that was one of my highlights of that zoo trip, was seeing the little baby hippo come running out for some food. Oh, it just made my heart explode. So I'm going to make notes about feeding times so that we can sort of catch things when they're feeding, which means they're a little bit more active, and it means my brain can see how they move. And each trip I try and sketch something, even though it may not look like anything. I'm trying to get my hands used to sketching from life. So I will be doing a video on that a little bit later on, but it takes a lot of footage to get where I want to show you actually something substantial, not just a little bit of crazy scribble here and there. So yeah, like I said, it's time to get this show on the road and start painting this and start getting this little journal spread all together. I've got my brushes down here, and this is a size 4, and that's the Escoda travel brushes, and probably my favorite size. And my little paint cloth that probably needs a wash, but I can't bring myself to wash it. I really just can't do it. It's too much pretties, too many pretties. All right, let's go.
All right, let's get started with a little bit of watercolor. I am using my blues, my grays, and a little bit of the brown, and I'm mixing my Daniel Smith palette with my Schmincke palette, and I'm being very, very loose. I'm not trying to add these details in with that tiny, tiny brush. I'm doing light washes of color in the general areas of the face, and I know that they will dry down and I'll use those beautiful washes of color to my advantage. So one thing that I try not to do is I don't try and tighten up with my watercolor. I generally do washes, and washes over each other go from light to dark, and I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm using a couple of the blues and then watering it down with the blue, and not a blue, a brown, and making that sort of muddy water, because the hippo pond is not clean. It's not clean crystal blue water, but it's sort of a bluey grey. And I really enjoy the way that this looks, and I love the way it dries down. So as you can see there, it's just got a really soft look to it. And I'm coming in with my mechanical pencil to tighten up some of the lines, but not too tight, because it's just a little playful sketch. It's not a piece of fine art. I've got the reference picture next to me just to have a look at sort of the lines and the shading. Even though I didn't really adhere to it, it just was like a little reminder, because it is the next day. I'm actually working in my dining room at the moment because I had family over, but I still had to work. So I set up the camera at the dining table and chatted to them as I worked. The beauty of working at home comes with its pros and it comes with its cons. But I go into those eyes quite a few times throughout the video, and that is with the mechanical pencil. I think I went in there with darker watercolor. I also went in there with a few shades of different colored pencil, and that was because I wanted those pupils to be big and dark, but I didn't want to add black pen, because I felt like adding black pen, I didn't add black pen at all, but I felt like if I did add black pen, it would just be it'd be way too much, and it would be too harsh against all the soft watercolor and the soft mechanical pencil. I really love how mechanical pencil looks with watercolor. It's very soft, and sometimes it blends really nicely in with watercolor. I am using my white gel pen to add those flecks in the eyes. And that's pretty much just layering in with a little bit more colored pencil. As I said, watercolor pencil and pencil over the top of watercolor is one of my absolute favorites, and it's something that I do a lot.
You want to leave this place where we grew up, this old town, just leave it all behind. The river's gonna cry when you're gone.
I am going back in with some of that schminky, and I'm pretty sure that color down the end is the Payne's bluish gray, but I'm watering it right down, and I'm using a water brush because I didn't actually bring my water jar to the table and I was so miffed at myself. But I always like to add those darker colors, a little bit less of a wash, a bit more pigmented, and put them in those areas where the shadows are going to be, and that would be the last sort of step. And then it's time to pack up those watercolors and to start working on the actual page construction. This is very straightforward, guys. It's just the way I lay things out in the Hobonichi was slightly different to how I would do it in my journal. There's a lot less creative finesse in my Hobonichi, if you will. I don't sketch as much, I don't paint as much. I am all about getting the actual daily details down in the Hobo, whereas with my journal it's more about me self-reflecting, and I've told you guys this, it's more about my thoughts, my feelings, you know, expressing myself, whereas the Hobonichi is more about documenting our life as a family. And so I'm always honing in on those actual daily details, and so that means there's a lot less of the weird and wacky side, if you will. There's a little bit every now and again, but I generally try and focus on getting as much of those daily family details into those pages. And this is why it takes me so long to get the pages to where they are, because I want to make sure I include all these little tidbits while still getting into the one page. I've only got one page, I don't have multiple pages, so I have to play page Tetris to get those things in, to make sure the details and the photographs that I want to see are on show. And if there's something that I'm okay with being behind a tip in, I need to put that picture there. So that's why it takes me forever, because I want to make sure that when something flips open or flips shut, that I'm still having certain elements, like the little teacup humans when they first trip to the zoo, and wanting to make sure that I saw that, and then making sure that I still got the opera house in, because in the harbour shot down below you can't see the opera house, so I made sure I took a second shot of it when I was on the ferry, and making sure that I had the little hippo there as well. So it's all about fiddling and fixing and making sure that you know where your tip-ins are going. And I fiddle so much even off camera until I'm completely happy, because I know once I glue those down, especially on this Tomoe River paper, there ain't no going back. And this is one of those moments where I glued down that little picture, that vintage picture of the kids, and I realized, oh no, I needed to put that little opera house behind them. And I'm like, please don't rip, because the Hobo paper, it's not very forgiving when it comes to adhering things. It's very forgiving for watercolor, but adhering things, man, once you pop that down, it's like, say your prayers if you try and pick it back up, especially with those sprocket prints. Ask me how I know.
Gonna let the sun shine in today. I'm trying to make this darkness go away. I'll paint with colors and I'll sing until my lungs give out.
Using that clear washi tape, because there's not that much of that photo that I would want to be covered up by normal washi tape, so I go in with clear tape to make sure that my photograph stays completely visible. I don't want a big line of graphic tape across my husband's face, and I wanted to also make sure that the Tiger Trek had its own little tip in with the clear tape as well, and that's something that I always do, especially if I don't want something covered. And I'm using sample cards because I'm trying to use what I have, and the sample cards are an easy portable target. I was going to put this little beautiful fox that Josie's Muse gave out for her patrons, but I ended up not using it because it didn't quite fit, and I secretly want to hoard it in my other journal. So I'm just picking through little odds and ends. I'm pretty sure I find a picture of my keep cup, and even though that didn't actually happen on the day, I knew that I had my keep cup with me on the day. I just didn't snap a picture, so I thought, why not use that as a placeholder, since I didn't actually get one on the day, but I knew that I had my keep cup with me, so I thought I'd just use that little print of my keep cup in the end. And then just using some pink note paper. I like to use different types of plain, either grid paper or note paper, as something that I would write over, especially if sometimes I think I'm going to use a pen that may very well bleed through. those numbers and letters are making another appearance, because I am deadly serious about the use it or lose it, guys. If you haven't seen that video yet, go and check out. We're starting a challenge next month. Not next month, next week, of use it or lose it. I am currently getting my little stash into my little basket, into my little tub, so that I can start the challenge. And I'm almost considering doing it once a week. Maybe a bit too hardcore for you guys, but I think it might be either once every fortnight. So 2 journal challenges of use it or lose it. So I'm definitely taking this serious, and I know you guys are as well. This is actually a scanned image of a little monster bookmark that I made for either Sam or Sian. I can't remember whose this actually was, but I love them so much I scanned them before I gave them to them, because I didn't want to make myself another one. And I decided to add a little tab to the hippo, and then just added a cute little background to the other one, just adding a little bit of me and a little bit of whimsy to the little hippo tab, because why not? It was sitting there, I needed to use it, so tabs for all. Adding pen work is something that I do when I'm procrastinating, so I like to add little lines and dashes and borders around things, and then I'm just writing down the bottom about the ferry trip and how the kids have been asking to go on the ferry for a really long time, and we just haven't done it. So this time around we decided to take the ferry to the actual zoo. So we drove to the city, parked, and because we had stuff to do in the city, we thought we'd just take the ferry over to the actual zoo, which the kids loved. It was a little bit windy and a little bit choppy for my liking. I did get a tiny bit seasick, but luckily it's only a 16-minute ferry ride, so it's not too bad. I've used my letters to do circular and key. I've just done it in font. That's another thing that I do try and do with my Hobonichi, is I try my very best. I don't do so well, but I try my best to do a little bit of lettering, because I like the look of different headers and things, and especially when I'm got so many things happening on a page and I want to journal about so many little different tidbits, that I like to give them their own little headers sometimes. And Lily's pointing to the hippo because she knew exactly why. She goes, "Is that because you love the feeding time?" And I'm like, "Yes, boo, it is." So she was sitting over my shoulder quite a bit as I was doing all this, which I'm okay with. She's lovely when it comes to me journaling. She gets very interested, and half the time she ends up going to her room, grabbing her journal and sitting down next to me, and I'm all down for that sort of thing. She was actually sketching some princesses while I was doing this, and I was just playing around with getting my little borders around my teacup humans, because I didn't want to add too much to that picture. It was kind of just to show how they were on their first day, and then how they were when they went to the zoo just recently. And these are actually single stickers that I got from Japan, and they have little cat heads of the days of the week and cat numbers, and I'm trying to use it. I don't want to hoard them, even though I secretly want to hoard them so very badly. I decided, nope, we've got to use it or lose it. I mean, hopefully we get to take the kids to Japan next year. I don't know if it's going to happen. Depends on John's spreadsheet of doom, i.e. the budget, and we'll see if he can make that happen. But it is nighttime, because we had to go run errands, and my in-laws stayed slightly too long, so I didn't get much time to do a little bit more work, and we were out for ages. So I apologize for the evening lighting. It is winter here in Australia, and the lighting in my house sucks, and I didn't want to get my giant day lamp out for the little bit that I had to do. And I'm just, like I said, doing those little borders and doing the line work for the headers. But it's pretty much coming to the end. I'm just doing the little tidbits and the little headers and things like that, and making sure I talk about the journaling, talk about what time set feeding time was for the little hippo, and how I just loved that short and stumpy little bundle of joy. So I put down the time that the hippo gets fed, and I love it. If you ever get a chance to visit Taronga Zoo in Sydney, I highly recommend it. There are some there's a baby elephant there at the moment, the baby leaf monkey, and the baby pygmy hippo are 3 of the babies that I saw, and I just want to hug them all so tightly. But that is pretty much it. There's only a little bit more journaling done, and I will have a blog post up tomorrow so you can see how I journaled the same day in 2 very different styles. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask down below, and I'll do my very best to get them answered, probably on Monday, since tomorrow is Sunday and I will be spending the day with my family. I am trying to be a little bit more better at not filming or working on the weekends. So have a wonderful day, Inkies, and I'll see you in the next video for Lose It. Use it or lose it. I'm so excited about this challenge. I can't wait to see what people put in their tubs. Have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you again soon. Bye! All you have to do is look at me. Sometimes I can't breathe, but it feels like you're the one who saves me. When I try, but don't succeed. Yeah, it feels like you're the one who saves me. The one who saves me.
Hello, Inkies! I hope you are well. I have an idea, and I know you guys like a challenge, and as there's been a bit of talk, mainly from me, but there's been a lot of really positive responses to the idea of us, or my family, transitioning to a lower waist family, and a lot of you guys sort of echoed the thought processes, and I've had people come to me and say thank you for making me more conscious and make me think a little outside. Some people have been doing this for a while now, which is amazing. So I thought I would create a way for us to do it without even think we're doing it, and I wanted to make a challenge, and it is the Use It or Lose It challenge, where we pick 5 to 10 items in our stash that we have had for a large amount of time and not used. And the reason why I thought about this is when I was doing my journal page here the other day, and I was using these alphabet stickers. I'm trying to think, here they are. Alphabet stickers that I have, and I've got a couple of sheets of them. I'm not even sure where the ones are that I actually used the other day. Probably on my journal. Here they are. So I have quite a few of these alphabet sticker sheets that have just sort of been floating around my studio, and I haven't used them. They've got cobwebs on the corners. But this sort of thing is the stuff that I need